Hello, everybody, and welcome into the reveal of my number 27th ranked team in my NBA preseason power rankings. I'm your host for this series, Sean Davis. And I first of all thank you guys for the continued support for this series. If you guys are new, please do subscribe here to the NBA Front Office Show YouTube channel. Ring that post notification bell as well, so you can stay up to date with the entire series. And follow me on Twitter at Sean_DAVI. We made a promise in the first episode of this series where we broke down the Houston Rockets roster. And I'm going to keep that promise. So like I mentioned in that Rockets episode, we will have some special guest interviews in this series at the end of my deep dive into the roster and my analysis of the coaching staff. We will be joined by a special guest, Jacob Kniffen, co-host of the Uncontested podcast on the Blue Wire Network. A great job by Jacob and the boys that they do cover the Oklahoma City Thunder. We'll be joined by him at the end of the episode. But I just spoiled it. We're going to dive into this Oklahoma City Thunder team, as you guys see on your screen right now. They're a part of this big group of teams here that are, rebuilding teams. I don't think any one of these teams can be a playing team this season, but a few of these teams I'm really excited to watch. Like the Thunder are going to be one of my as long as they're healthy, of course, they're going to be one of my league pass teams this season. I'm really, really excited about this Thunder team. I'm really excited about their future. And this Thunder team is just going to be a ton of fun. And let's kick things off how we always do by taking a look at their offseason. And it's very uneventful offseason, especially in terms of additions and departures. They lose Isaiah Roby and they lose Xavier Simpson. Honestly, the two biggest departures. But they brought in a really big and honestly an underrated addition in terms of the offseason and, free agency. And it's not free agent, he's a coach, but bringing in Chip England from the San Antonio Spurs. He's been referred to as the shot doctor, working in San Antonio for, I believe, since 2005 as a guy that's worked with Tony Parker, worked with Kawhi Leonard, I believe Richard Jefferson as well, amongst all the other names. I believe DeJounte Murray on, really refining their shots and getting better at their shooting craft. So that's a really big pickup for this coaching staff. One of the best shooting coaches out there. Been really instrumental to some of the Spurs' success in the past. And I love that pickup. And then you have the draft, and they had a great draft. I think first off, and we're gonna talk more in depth about all these draft selections when we get to their respective skill positions and stuff like that. But I thought they aced the draft. Sam Presti has really done a really good job, I feel, with this rebuild. In this rebuilding process, I get it. It's frustrating if you're an Oklahoma City Thunder fan, but I think that not coach. We're gonna get to the coach staff in just a sec, but I think I truly do believe that Sam Presti's done a great job. They are over the cap, but again, it's marked in orange because it's not too big of a problem heading into next season. They'll be fine. It's not like they'll be deep into over the cap. And they are not over the luxury tax. They are not a tax-paying team this season. But overall, a net positive offseason. They weren't going to spend a bunch of money anyway in terms of re-signing guys. Bringing in new talent. But they got, in my opinion, what was a steal of a contract and such a team-friendly deal. So when Lou Dort, he was coming up on a contract, and Lou Dort, they declined his team option, and then they declined it knowing like, hey, we're going to work something out, and they wound up working it out rather quickly. And Lou Dort, per Spotrac, is on a 5-year, $82.5 million contract, with the last year of that deal, which would be his age 27 season, will be a team option for $17 million. Holy cow, that is such a steal. He's already one of the premier defensive guards in the NBA, guard/wings, already one of the premier defensive talents in the NBA. But, and I'm going to talk about this with Giddey, but I think this applies to Lou Dort being a better three-point shooter. He averaged 17 points per game last year, and I want to save some of my stuff for when we get to Lou Dort in the starting front court. But man, for assuming the positive growth we've seen year to year with Lou Dort, I'm not saying he's gonna be a superstar or anything, but it keeps going trending upwards, man. Like the Thunder, they could have a borderline all-star on, high-end rotation player money. Thinking Duncan Robinson, to some degree, Luke Kennard. This is a really, really team-friendly contract, and I really loved the Thunder's offseason. But let's dive into this coaching staff and scheme and really talk about what they're going to be running here in Oklahoma City. Head coach Mark Daigneault is going to rank 24th for me out of all NBA coaches. He's going to rank 28th offensively, and they're going to rank 23rd defensively. First off, Coach Daigneault, working under Billy Donovan, he started off actually as a student manager, so I have a lot of respect for that. And Coach Daigneault's process of working his way up, really impressing people, which is what you have to do in that department. But then he had a couple of stops in a row, but then he ends up at Florida, where he's with Billy Donovan at Florida for a few years. And then he goes to work for the Oklahoma City Thunder's G League team for a few years. And then he was with Billy Donovan for the last, I believe, year or two when Coach Donovan was in Oklahoma City. And then they just promoted him. He promoted from within. And Coach Daigneault was their guy. And like I mentioned, they bring in Coach Chip England from San Antonio. In terms of the scheme and stuff like that, I think defensively, they get really, really creative. And I think this is a really well-coached defensive team. Again, this was the 8th best. And when you look into this, and looking at some of the data and the stats, you see 8th best defense for the All-Star break. Like, wait, what? But then you pop on some of the film, and when this team was healthy, granted they had some nice defensive guards and they had some nice pieces here defensively. Don't get me wrong, but man, this is a really well coached defensive team with and how they guard you in the half court. Really limiting the drive, cutting off driving lanes. How they play in the gap is awesome to watch. They do a great job of having helping the helper defensively. They really seem to really lock in and commit defensively. And I think that is due to Coach Daigneault. Offensively, at least much to be desired. I do understand. I do understand that the spacing wasn't the best last season. And, they didn't have a lot of guys that could really stretch the floor and knock down perimeter jumpers. But I just don't think they run anything creative offensively. They don't do anything creative to me offensively in terms of, their motion offense or their even the sets I don't think are too creative. It's not the worst, but I think it's very cut and dry offensively. Run this 5-out ball screen motion. Like, it's not like Houston's. There actually is a lot of motion concepts. The Thunder offense is a lot more, hey, where's Shea? Where's Giddey at? Let's get him a spread pick and roll. Let's stretch the floor out. Go 5-out, spread pick and roll. That's really what it is. This offense is very cut and dry. And maybe get some drive and kick principles in there. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of the offense. Granted, has a ton of room for growth, and Coach Daigneault's only, I believe, 37, so he's still a young coach. He still has a lot of time to learn. So I do like Coach Daigneault, and I hope this year and next year goes well for him. I don't want him to be a replacement, just like a filler coach. I really do like him a lot. I think defensively he does a lot of great stuff. So hope this team can rally around him and play well. But let's dive into this backcourt, which is definitely going to be a strength for this team. And, man, Josh Giddey and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander are just incredible. This is a really, really good backcourt. It does rank in the upper echelon of backcourts in the Western Conference. It could be, a top 5, maybe even backcourt in the Western Conference by the end of the season. I don't think that's too far stretched. But Josh Giddey, an incredible passer who has a really nice runner, really nice floater when he gets into the lane. The shooting ability is a massive question mark. He's not the best defender. I think that those two things are holding him back. The way he shoots, I talk about this with Jacob at the end of the episode in our interview. The way he shoots, he kind of has a really wonky release. It's almost like, you're a 12-year-old, 13-year-old. You almost like push it to get it up there, and then he kicks his leg out too. It's a strange looking shot, and I don't think he can get it off quick enough. So that is concerning. But, I think I really do like him a lot, man. Giddy's a ton of fun. You put him in a ball screen, he can just dice you up. He's a bigger guard that can really rebound the basketball well. And so I love Giddy a lot. And then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you want to talk about a guy that just puts a ton of pressure on the rim. That is Shai. He is just attacking the rim with aggression, right? Over 34% of his shots, were attempted at the rim, which is ranks in the 82nd percentile. It is a drop off from 42% of the previous season. But, Shai, incredibly efficient driving the rim. He leads. He's amongst the league leaders in drives per game. So in terms of being able to get downhill, finish near the basket, it's incredible for Shai. The shot making ability, on the perimeter, stuff like that, can get a little shaky. He doesn't shoot as many threes, but that's fine. The shot making ability is definitely improving. He also finishes well at the rim. He's finishing better now too. He's shot 62% at the rim last season. So a lot of mid range shots. He does shoot a decent amount of threes as well. But I think the problems as well with Shai's shot selection, I'm not even blaming more him. I think this is, again, going back to the offensive deficiencies. I don't think the offense does a great job of, setting things up for Shai and setting things up for Giddy. Although I think you could argue that was going to help. That was going to come with Chet. Like, if they were able to bring Chet in. Unfortunately, Chet is out with an injury. He's going to miss all year, and I'll talk about Chet in just a second. But, I love Shai. I love Giddy. I don't think they're going to trade Shai anytime soon. Definitely not this year. Not even next year. I think you're at minimum 2 to 3 seasons away from Shai even coming close to leaving Oklahoma City. You have good depth, too. Trey Mann's a nice piece, a nice rotation piece that they have on this roster. I love the Jalen Williams pickup. In hindsight, I like it. At the time, I was a little confused about the Jalen Williams signing, or draft selection, excuse me. But, looking back on it, being able to go watch some more tape and do some post evaluations on it, I think this is a perfect fit. Jalen Williams, you're looking at a elite catch and shoot 3-point threat day one, who defensively has some upside and really was a standout at the combine, a standout in NIT when at Santa Clara. A guy that can also be a secondary ball handler and facilitator that can get downhill. He doesn't like to burst out of the ball screen. He's a lot more patient, and which is a welcome surprise. So I like the Jalen Williams signing, and then you have some really nice depth: Aaron Wiggins, Ty Jerome, Theo Maledon. So you have some nice depth in your backcourt as well. And then let's go talk about your starting front court: Lou Dort, Darius Bazley, Jeremiah Robinson Earl. Let's start with Jeremiah Robinson Earl. Just a drop coverage big. That's fine. Don't expect too much from him. Honestly, I think he's only going to start this year because they're going to miss Chet, which again is just really unfortunate. I think they were. I would have really liked to see what the fit with Chet year one can be. But we got to wait another year, and I think that does push this team back a year or two. Jeremiah Robinson Earl, it can stretch the floor out a little bit, 35% three-point shooter last year. I do think they like some of the stuff he provides for them. Not a rim protector at all, though, not a lob threat, and I think they're going to miss that. But Darius Bazley, first off, Cincinnati, stand up, let's go. Cincinnati native, so that pumps me up a lot. But also, this is Darius Bazley, good rotation piece. I think he's a fine rotation guy for a championship team. Not that much to that here, though, for this Thunder team. Another young player, though, that I think Coach Daigneault really does like a lot. Darius Bazley last year had a much better season. I think he needs to, become a little bit more solid, a little more consistent with that outside shot, which has really been a big problem for him. But, not a terrible defender. And really just needs to work on that jumper. But again, and going back to Chip, man, I think Chip's going to help a lot with Giddy, to some extent, Shai, Darius Bazley even, and then Lou Dort, who I am so high on. And I mean, I don't have the green arrow for him, but man, I wish I could attach like 4 of them to him. That's maybe my bad. But Lou Dort, man, is such a really good defender. and a guy that has turned into a legitimate secondary scoring option. He had a few games last year. I believe he had a game against Chicago, or no, it was a game against Dallas. Well, the same Chicago game. But where he was just incredible scoring the basketball and still being taxed with, guarding the best perimeter player. And yeah, he's 6'3", 6'3 and a half, I believe is his exact measurements. But man, Lou Dort really gets into you. He gets into you well. He positions his body well defensively. A really smart, high basketball IQ defender. Does a great job of locking and trailing. One of the better defensive players I've seen at doing that. Isolation defense, sure, whatever you need from him. I love watching Lou Dort defensively. He's just a mastermind. And again, the 3-point shooting becomes, league average. He shot 33% last year. The year before that, he shot 34%. So if he's really that 35% 3-point shooter, just get more efficient from the field. That's another big concern. He shot 40% from the field last year. He shot 38.7% from the field the year prior. So becoming a more efficient scorer and creator. Again, like I mentioned, that contract is going to look like a bargain in a couple of years. Set to make around $15 million this season and next season as well. So a great contract for the Thunder. And I'm really high on Lou Dort. Lou Dort is one of my guys this season. And then, you get to talk about the draft a little bit more. And as you're going to hear with me and Jacob, I think they're going to miss Chet this year. For one, I think it would have been nice to see how the fit looks. And you can make some adjustments and, get more reps in. And going into year 2, you learn and you grow from it. Now you're going to get Chet's first year and his second year, which is never ideal. And I think Chet could have been a real connector piece for this offense, which is a phrase you're going to hear a lot in the episode or the interview, excuse me. Could have been a real connector piece. I'm just not sure they have now, which is unfortunate. But I really do. I really love Chet, man. I thought he was the top 4 graded player on my board. I guess I was a little bit lower on Chet, but I mean, at the end of the day, Chet Holmgren is definitely a fun player to watch, man. He is just incredible. His ability to stretch the floor and knock down perimeter jumpers, the shot blocking ability, and just the pure rim protection ability is also unmatched. I love Chet. The shot making at his size, it's incredible, and they're going to miss him a lot. Mike Muscala, Derek Favors, guys that can stretch the floor a little bit, better than Lewis in the locker room. Jalen Williams, now the rookie out of Arkansas. I like this pickup as well. Big fan of this pickup in the second round. Really nice defensive piece and defensive player. But, it's going to be interesting to see how he, maps out his NBA career. But, man, he has incredible feel for the game offensively. And his passing ability is also a high trait of mine, and something I really like about Jalen Williams. And I'm curious to see if, in the absence of Chet, could he be that connector piece offensively and do some things that, they might have gotten with Chet, not at the same level of degree, but, some to the extent, not to the extent, excuse me, but, just some things that can really open up the offense, and they're going to miss without Chet for sure. And then you sign Ousmane Dieng. You trade for him on draft night. A guy that in the ball screen is incredible. The shooting ability is a massive, massive question mark, but decent athleticism and in day one could be a really, really good defender. And then, so that's the rookies. And then Kendrick Williams, I'm surprised they haven't traded him yet. I think, that's a guy, him, Mike Muscala potentially. Those are a couple of guys that I think could be trade pieces to a championship contender that, wants some wing depth or another big. That doesn't, all the way, sit right with me why they haven't done that yet. But, good depth pieces. And as you guys can see here for my strengths and weaknesses for this Thunder team, I think the defensive upside is there. And like I mentioned, they were 8th before the All-Star break in defensive rating. And then, they started running out some really, really weird lineups. So I think they wound up getting 17th in defensive rating for the season. But before the All-Star break, this was the 8th best team in basketball, 8th best defensive team in basketball, excuse me. They just can't score worth anything. The future draft capital is still a strength of mine. Sam Presti, this rebuild where you get all the picks, it's still a strength. You have a great backcourt, headed by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Josh Giddey. The depth all across the board, when you look at the backcourt or at the front court, you have really nice depth. And then the young upside, whether you look at Shai, Giddey, Lou Dort, Chet, Ousmane Dieng, Jalen Williams, J-Dub, like I think I might Darius Baisley, Pukashevsky, like they just have all the depth and they have a lot of young upside in this core. The weaknesses, though, I think the use could be a weakness where it's going to be a lot of growing pains that this team's going to have to endure and go through. But the half-court offense, just the spacing in general, it's just so concerning for me. Now, you brought in some guys that they could help that this season, but the half-court offense in general is just a massive concern. Again, like I mentioned with Coach Mark Daigneault, they don't do anything really spectacular. So, yeah, this Thunder team's going to rank 27th for me. The over-under is 26.5. This is a no bet. No bet for me whatsoever. I don't feel any confidence about that. They were, let's just say, a Chet not getting hurt injury away from being in my next tier. As you guys saw at the top, I'm going to show it again with this graphic. This was a team that, is on the fringe of being a part of that next tier of teams that we'll talk about rather soon. But, the Thunder, it's a really fun team. It's going to be a part of my League Pass watchers, and I think they should be a part of yours as well. But, all right, guys, great interview coming up for you guys. Let's dive into the interview with Jacob Kniffen. Stay tuned. All right, I want to welcome everybody into our post-interview. You guys just saw my in-depth deep dive into the Thunder's roster and coaching staff. Go check that out and rewind back if you haven't already. But going to welcome you guys into our first interview in the series. Jacob Kniffen, co-host of the Uncontested Thunder podcast. Jacob, you can follow him on Twitter at Jacob Kniffen on Twitter. And Jacob, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your day.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I really look forward to chatting some basketball and some Thunder as, we close into training camp and preseason in less than a month. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, go check them out. They do a bunch of great work. So I want to ask, because, Thunder fans I've talked to and know, they were ecstatic when it happened. Draft night, I feel like we knew as long as the Magic didn't take them, that you guys were going to get your choice. Paolo goes number 1. Well, first off, were there any nerves around the draft for you guys? And first off, who did you want the Thunder to take on draft night before Paolo went number 1?
I wanted Chet Holmgren. I felt very confident that Chet would be the guy that the Thunder wanted. And then as we got closer and closer to draft day, that belief just kind of started to strengthen a little bit, especially when Chet had a private workout with the Orlando Magic. And he was supposed to have an interview afterwards. And the Magic reported that Chet had a non-COVID illness and wouldn't be doing that interview. And some Magic guys reached out to me and were like, hey, do you know anything that's going on with this? Because we think he just dipped out of town. And so that made me start to put some puzzle pieces together. And Chet had just bailed because he didn't want to get taken number 1. It sounds like he and Oklahoma City had really circled each other as this perfect pairing. So I felt pretty confident that was who the Thunder wanted. That was definitely who I wanted. And it all came together there on draft day.
So just walk me through it. What's going through your head? The Thunder take Chet, number 2 overall. He was the second highest graded player on my personal big board. What's your thought process going through? Hey, the Thunder just took Chet.
Relief that we finally could stop draft coverage on the podcast and stop talking about who they would take and then talk about who they actually took. But just excitement. I mean, I think some of the best players in the NBA are guys that don't have clean comps, right? We can't say this player is this type of archetype. He is a, your traditional 3-and-D wing like Jabari Smith Jr. is. Like Chet is really one of one. We haven't seen anyone really like him before. And so that was one of the most exciting things for me and why I wanted him. And this kind of funky lineup that the Thunder is building, where they have these crazy high IQ, maybe not the most athletic players, but these guys that read the game really well, can dribble, pass, and shoot, are kind of jack of all trades type of guys. Chet just fit in so seamlessly with that. And the thing that the Thunder really lacked last season was 3-point shooting, like spacing for guys like Shea and Giddy, and a defensive rim deterrent, a rim protector, somebody who could really shut down the interior of their defense. And Chet was everything that this team needed, kind of all put together into one clean package. So it just felt like a beautiful pairing right from the get go. And then we see his first game in Summer League out in Utah, where he just snaps and goes crazy. He's hitting step back threes, blocking shots, and then continues to do so out in Las Vegas as well. Just really started to solidify, I think, for a lot of Thunder fans, who this kid is and how impactful he'll be on this team.
Right. So what have been your thoughts? A couple years back, same year the Lakers won a championship. You guys trade for Chris Paul. You unfortunately fall in game 7. I think Lou Dort got shot blocked by it, if I recall. And then you trade Chris Paul, you enter in the Sam Presti, all the picks rebuild. And Billy Donovan goes away, he goes to Chicago. You hire Mark Dagnall, who we'll talk about just a sec. But what have been your thoughts in general on this Sam Presti, all the picks rebuild process so far?
Yeah, so they kind of started that process with the Paul George trade to the Clippers, and then subsequently, like the 2 days later, I think the next day maybe, they trade Jeremy Grant to Denver. A couple of weeks later, the Russell Westbrook trade for Chris Paul, and then they trade Steven Adams. They turn around and they trade Chris Paul. They trade Dennis Schroeder. Like, it took about a full season for them to really tear this thing down to the studs. I mean, I thought when they did the Russell Westbrook Chris Paul deal, they would be tanking, but Chris Paul just proved to be too freaking good, and they wrote out that bubble year. And so it took them about a full year to really tear this thing down to the studs. But the vision, I think, is pretty clear. In a small market like Oklahoma City, you'll never be a free agent destination. The biggest free agent the Thunder have ever signed is Nerlens Noel on a minimum out of Dallas after he was injured and all that. Or you could argue maybe like an Anthony Morrow or a Patrick Patterson. Like, the list is very small and very unimpressive. Like, they are not a free agent team because it's not a free agent market. And so the best way to get high quality NBA talent and keep them in a small market is to draft them. And so you get as many draft picks as you possibly can. You take as many bites at that apple until you hopefully hit a star like a Kevin Durant, a Russell Westbrook, a James Harden. I don't think they'll ever do that again in back-to-back years. That's maybe the most absurd draft run, maybe of any team ever, right? And so the writing was on the wall. This is how they're going to rebuild. General manager Sam Presti even wrote an op-ed in the local paper explaining, like, this is our process. This is what we're going to do, and this is why we're doing it, because this is our best chance to team build. And I think a lot of people understand the Thunder aren't going to make all those first round selections. You can't roster that many bodies. That trades are eventually coming. They did a trade this past draft to secure pick number 11 and have 3 lottery picks. I've been talking a lot about what the Cleveland Cavaliers just did for Donovan Mitchell, what the Atlanta Hawks just did for DeJounte Murray. I feel like Oklahoma City is a year or two away from pulling the trigger and dropping all their draft picks to make a similar type move. So for somebody who covers the small market, this process of what Sam Presti is doing makes a lot of sense to me, because different markets just have to build teams differently. You're kind of playing on a different playing field, honestly. The Thunder are from the Chicagos, the Miamis, the New Yorks, the LAs, etc.
Yeah, no, totally. I think I can understand Thunder fans if they are frustrated, because it can be a little nerve wracking. Like, God, man, like, we used to have all these picks just lying here, laying around. But like you mentioned, what the Cavs did so well post LeBron was, okay, great, we have picks. First off, you have to hit in the draft, and then you have to develop them within. And they got a stud in Darius Garland. You guys have a couple of guys in Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Giddy. We have to hit aces in the draft. And then, when your opportunity hits and there's a disgruntled superstar, then you put your chips all in. And that's what the Cavs did. And like you mentioned, you could definitely expect the Thunder to do that in a couple of years. So the coach you replaced Billy Donovan with is Coach Dingnold, who was the G League coach when Billy Donovan was in town. How would you grade his performances so far? In his first 2 years, it's really hard because when you evaluate coaches, the biggest part you're looking at is like 7-game playoff series, but making the adjustments from in that. But how would you grade his performance so far his first 2 years as Thunder head coach?
Yeah. So interesting thing about Mark Daigneault is he is also a former University of Florida coach. He was an
Yeah.
assistant coach under Billy. The Thunder actually hired Daigneault before they hired Billy Donovan, a year or two before, and then he was his eventual replacement. So this kind of long winding circle that Coach Daigneault has taken is pretty fascinating. Whenever they hired him, it was the most Thunder hire you could possibly make. They are going into a rebuilding process. And so they got a guy that isn't costing them very much as a coach. You don't have to go pay Mark $5 or $6 million a year. And number two, it kind of follows this model that the Thunder have. They brought in Mark. He was like a video assistant. He coached the G League. The year before he became head coach, he got bumped up to the Thunder and was an assistant. And they basically molded this guy and got him in their system and turned him into what they kind of had envisioned. That's the same way they do with their front office. It's the same thing that they do with their players, right? They bring them through and they take them. They're not going to skip steps. They're going to go step by step through this process to try to get guys to where they want them to be. It's so hard to evaluate a coach on a tanking team, right?
Yeah.
Like we look at it, and a lot of times you evaluate coaches by games they win and lost. Well, last season at the end of the year, the Thunder are starting Xavier Simpson and Georgios Kalazakis, right?
Yeah.
You can't judge a guy off of wins and losses in that sense. But I think the culture he has tried to instill, there was a point in like February last year where the Thunder were top 12 in defense in the league.
Yeah, they were
Um,
the eighth best defense before the All-Star break.
yeah, and they were playing Isaiah Roby and Mike Muscala and Derek Favors at center, like no interior presence whatsoever. So the style that he is building, the culture that he is setting within the organization, I think is palpable. I think the young guys really respond to it. Now, is he going to be the coach in 3 or 4 years when this team is hopefully making like deep playoff runs and getting back to being relative in the league again? Maybe not. Maybe he's the type of coach that is really good at relationships and development. But once you get up to those higher levels, you need to go out and hire somebody else. But I think so far for what they're asking him to do, which is develop young guys, instill accountability in them, and set a culture for this organization where everyone that comes in is held to the same standard. I think he's done very well with those things from what we can see from the outside.
Yeah, totally. And I'm not going to go too in depth. I talked about Coach Daniel in the past and earlier on in the episode for the people listening and watching, but I was really impressed. I was like, I saw that stat. I was like, wow, they're eighth. And then you go watch some game footage back. You're like, oh crap, yeah, they have a lot of potential to be a really, really, really good defensive team. So I definitely like that a lot. But one of the problems that I'm sure you guys have covered on your podcast and just something when you watch film on this team is that they really, really struggled offensively last year.
Mhm.
I'm like, well, dang, they were eighth defensively. Why were they so bad? Well, crap, they can't score. So, Jacob, what was the biggest problem last year with the Thunder offense in your eyes, and how can they improve that going into next season?
Spacing. Spacing is the biggest thing because there are two things that fall into that. Spacing opens up the inside of the court in the lane, and guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander led the league in drives per game the past 2 seasons, incredibly efficient at the rim, has a high free throw rate. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is at his best when the lane is open and he can drive, but the Thunder lack shooting. And so when you have spacing, you have guys that can hit threes, which is going to help your offense. And B, those guys have gravity, pulling defenders out, opening that lane for guys like Shai and Josh Giddey to drive into the lane and either make a play for themselves or for others. Thunder just didn't have that last year. Darius Baisley, not a good 3-point shooter. Derek Favors doesn't shoot threes. Um, you know, Lou Dort, like a little below league average, shot a lot of them though. So you just have so many defenses kind of sagging into the middle of the floor and really making life hard for guys like Josh and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander.
Right.
And the offense just felt like it was stuck in mud. And that's I think that's one reason why so many people were so excited about Chet Holmgren. He's going to space the floor for you. He can step out and hit a three. He can also be a lob threat, which the Thunder really didn't have one of those last year. Not a lot of guys getting above the rim for this team. Derek Favors isn't going to screen and roll and go and rise up above the rim and throw one down. Neither is Mike Muscala. So I think that was the hope for fans for Chet this year, was he was going to fill that role that the Thunder so desperately needed offensively by spacing the floor out, hitting threes, and opening up the interior for guys like Shea to get in there and do work.
Yeah. And speaking of Shea, who by the way is just awesome to watch, what are your thoughts on Shea and Josh Giddey as a duo so far, and how they fit together on the court? What do you think about that so far? We saw a little bit of it last year, but going into year two.
Yeah, the thing that I was most looking forward to post All-Star break last year was watching those two create some chemistry, because both of them were kind of in and out. And then Josh gets hurt, and then they didn't get a chance to do that. So that's the thing I'm watching for most to start this next season, because they're two very interesting guys. Josh is obviously at his best with the ball in his hands, setting up other guys. I might be biased, but I think 20-year-old Josh Giddey is maybe a top 5 passer in the league right now. Uh, in 5-6 years, whenever he hits his prime, he's going to be like elite. And so you want that guy with the ball in his hands, setting other guys up. But Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is also elite with the ball in his hands, getting to the basket. And you only have one basketball for two guys. So it's going to be interesting to see, can Shea take more of a role off the ball, still score, and maybe even more efficiently, but try to learn how to move off ball and do these things to where Josh can get him in the most advantageous situations possible. Shea maybe has the ball, gets off of it, makes a cut, gets back on it to get an easy look. Those are some things they're going to have to work through. I don't think they had a lot of opportunity with that last year. And I honestly think that I keep going back to Chet here. He's like almost like the key for everything. I feel
Yeah.
like Chet was like this beautiful connector between those two, right? Both of those guys like to play on ball. Well, Chet can play off ball, and Chet can play with either of them. And, Chet and Josh could run a pick and roll where Chet short rolls and gets the ball at the free throw line and kicks out to a Shea Gilgeous-Alexander in the corner, who cuts off and finishes at the rim. Like, he was going to be such a great connector piece. But that's probably the biggest thing I'm looking for, because I feel like we don't have enough data on what those two guys look together and if they can build that chemistry.
Yeah, and then all right, guys who are watching, they know I'm big into the X's and O's. You brought up like an example why Chet could be a connector piece, like you're bringing up. One of the things I noticed when you watch some film on the Thunder from last year is like they run a lot for Giddey, especially coming up the floor in shade too. They run a lot of middle third ball screens for those guys. But like if it's Chet setting in, Chet short rolls, and like you brought up, Shay's in the corner, either you're putting the defense in a bind, because it's either okay, we're gonna tag, we're gonna pull off the corner and try to support on the roll from Chet, which means you're leaving Shea Gilgeous-Alexander in the corner wide open, or if you stay home, then it's Chet from the free throw line going one on one with, likely, depending on how they're playing it, a potentially smaller defender, and Chet from the free throw line. I like my chances. So yeah, I agree. I think with Chet on the floor, I think it opens up the offense. And it just sucks, man, that he's going to miss this year. And if Chet was there, I would have probably had you guys ranked a little higher, because I love Chet. I think Chet would have made this team a lot more fun. It's going to be a fun team to watch for sure. But yeah, I can't agree more. But let's talk more about Josh Giddey. We talked a lot about Shea, a lot about Chen, Coach Dagnall. But how can you, or what's the biggest thing you're looking for Josh Giddey to get better at heading into year two? Obviously, you think he's a top 5 passer. I went through it in my head. I don't think that's that too far off. But what should we be expecting Giddey to get better at this year? What's that one thing for you?
The thing that separates Josh right now, I mean, he's insanely big, like
Yeah.
insanely big. Chet is 7'1", and watching Josh stand next to Chet at Summer League, I was like, there's not that big of a difference. Josh is listed at 6'8". I think he's probably 6'9", maybe pushing 6'10". He's like 225. I mean, He's nearly power forward sized,
Yeah.
playing point guard. He's not the best defender in the world, but he can hold up. He's better guarding bigger guys that aren't so like low to the ground and shifty. The playmaking is elite. The vision, he's got a really beautiful runner. He finishes at the rim pretty well. The thing separating Josh from being a good starter to being like a possible multi-time all-star is the jump shot.
Yeah.
He's got a nice looking like little midi pull up that he can hit, but his three-pointer, I think he shot like 27 or 28% last year on 3 or 4 attempts a game. Teams are going to realize when Josh goes over a screen, you always go under because he
Right.
can't shoot. His form is a little wonky. He's got like this little setup and then release. Whenever he jumps, he kicks a leg out. It's not very consistent. If the 3-point shot comes around, like even like to league average, if he can shoot 34, 35% from 3 on 4 attempts a game, that is going to unlock so much for him on the court that it will be absurd. Because as soon as somebody goes over a screen with Josh Giddey, it's over. Like he can make any read on that court to get somebody wide open. He's going to be able to pick defenses apart. The shooting is the biggest thing. And this offseason, the Thunder hired away longtime Spurs assistant Chip England, also known as the shot doctor. He worked with guys like Kawhi, with Tony Parker.
Yeah.
I think Josh Giddey is like reason A why the Thunder went out and dropped the money to hire Chip England. Because if he can work with Josh and get Josh's jump shot, let's say this year Josh gets to 31% up from 28. And then by the time his rookie contract is over, he's shooting 33, 34%. I think that player is an all-star caliber player. And it all just hinges on that jump shot. As a guy that covers the Lakers, Russell Westbrook, right? I covered that dude for years and years and years. If the jump shot was there, I mean, we're talking a drastically different player. And that's kind of how I see Josh. If he can develop that shot, I think the sky's the limit for the kid.
Yeah, Giddy is he's so fun to watch. He shot 26% from 3 last year. And like you
I gave
mentioned,
him too
man,
much credit.
you gave a little too much credit. No, yeah, I agree with the evaluation completely. Like if he shoots even like 31% from 3, if that's what he is for his career, for an example, is drastically better shooting 31% compared to 26%. But if that's who he is, then man, like you mentioned, it's just so much harder to guard him in pick and roll scenarios because he has the potential to be like a Luka or a Chris Paul in ball screen scenarios where it's a legitimate nightmare. Like you can't go under because they'll shoot over you. If you fight over top and you go a drop coverage, then he's just gonna pick you apart, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And then like those guys are so quick at getting the ball out of their hands, you can't blitz them or hedge them. So it's just gonna be a nightmare if he could get that shot up. But yeah, I agree. And Giddy's gonna be so fun. And I think next season it's gonna be another development year, and they're gonna have to try to really sort out the Giddy and Shea fit and see if that's something they can build with going forward. Did you buy any of the Shea trade stuff that was out there for like 3 days? Did you buy any of that?
No. At the end of the day, here's the thing with Shea. He has yet to start his first year of a 5-year rookie extension that he chose to have no opt-outs at the end. There's no player option. There's no team option, nothing. It's a full 5. At the exit interviews, he was the happiest dude in the world, talking about how he speaks with the front office and the coaching staff. They're on the same page. He understands the plan. He's excited for what they're building. I mean, even if Shea came to the front office and said, "Hey, I want out. I don't want to tank again." Kevin Durant tried that, and guess what? He's still in Brooklyn, right? Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, I love the dude. I think he's possibly an all-star this season. He's finally going to break through that ceiling that he's at. He is going to have a hard time forcing his way out, and I don't think he wants out. I think especially like people in New York, for instance. Oh, we missed on Donovan Mitchell. Who's the next guy on a bad team that we can just go get because we are one of the biggest markets in the league and this is what we do? I think there's that narrative. Now, if you told me that there was legitimate trade discussions for Shea at the 2021 draft when the Thunder had their eye set on Evan Mobley, I might believe that. I might buy into that a little bit. But this offseason and going into this season, oh, they should trade Shea. He doesn't match the timeline. The dude's like 25 years old, 24 years old. He is your timeline, and I think that whenever you put certain pieces around Shea, it's going to unlock even more of his game and make him even better. I don't buy for a second that he is available. He will be on this team. Now, maybe he doesn't finish those 5 years with Oklahoma City, but I don't think there's any want on either side of that relationship to get out right now.
I agree. I like you mentioned, it's just the big name team like the Knicks and a big market. They're not even a big name team anymore. They've been awful, but big market team like the Knicks. You miss on Donovan Mitchell, like you said, man. Like, who's the next really good player that could want out? Shea, but like you said, he hasn't even won it out, and things seem to be good on his end. But all right, man, that's gonna be it, man. Thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else you want to add on here? And if not, tell people where they can find you, where they can see you at, man.
Awesome. The only other thing I'll add, I'm a big time believer in Jalen Williams from Santa Clara, J-Dub, as he's called. Thunder took him pick number 12 overall. I was excited for him with Chet. Without Chet, I think he's going to get even more opportunities this year. He's a rookie I would look out for. Like, I think a 6'6" guy with a 7'2" wingspan who shot something like 47% on catch and shoot threes in his final year in college. You want to talk about a connector piece that's really going to make stuff click between Shea and Josh. I think J-Dub might be that guy. So if anybody has a league pass, because the Thunder aren't going to be on national TV this year, and decide to watch Thunder games, he's the guy I would definitely keep your eye on. But I appreciate you having me on here, Sean. Yeah, anyone can find my podcast, The Young Contested, anywhere you listen to podcasts, or on YouTube, or on all social media, covering the OKC Thunder, all 82 games this season. We've been here for 2 tank seasons. I'm ready for tank season number 3 with Chet out. Not excited about it, but I'm already scouting the 2023 draft class, seeing what next year is going to hold for this team. So, but I appreciate you having me on. So thanks so much, man.
All right, everybody. Thank you for sticking around for my great interview with the co-host of the Uncontested Podcast, Jacob Kniffen. And thank you all so much for tuning into this deep dive of the Oklahoma City Thunder. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you guys are new, please subscribe right here to the NBA Front Office Show's YouTube channel. Ring that post notification bell as well. Sean Davis here for the NBA Front Office Show. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. Peace out.